What? You and Kai both asked as Chrono burst through the door to the dining room. He had been huffing and puffing when he got there. What would they need from Yin? Kai got up and walked over to Chrono. The empress has called for her. He spoke and took a breath, and that they needed her as soon as possible. He continued. Kai looked at you. You had a phase of pure shock and confusion. Why would the empress need you? I'll go. You spoke as Yona and Haru gasped. But my lady, what if you get hurt or worse? Haru spoke, grabbing your shoulders. Haru, I'm sorry, but I have to go. If the empress orders me to be there, then I need to. You spoke, looking down at your trembling hands. You stood up and walked to the door. I'll be going then. You spoke. Then take this. You heard Kai speak. He had been getting up, and when you looked at him, he had it in his hands, placed in his pocket. He took out a crow's feather and placed it in your obi belt. If you need help, then someone will come. He spoke. You nodded and followed Chrono till you came up in front the pavilion. A girl in a red kimono. Her jewelry had been jade, and she had 4 sets of eyes. You must be Lady Yin, am I right? She asked, to which you nodded. You didn't realize, but there had been a carriage waiting for the both of you. She turned to the direction to the carriage. And also, you will be provided food, water, and clothing. She spoke as you nodded to Chrono. The carriage door opened and both of you and the girl got in. Sitting on opposite sides of the carriage, it was so quiet that you were a little nervous. You couldn't see outside, like they didn't want you to see where you were going. Maybe so the palace could be hidden from the view of others. Seeing how many times you had been poisoned, it was understandable why the castle was like this if you were in her shoes. Just imagining what she went through, it could make you puke. That was until the carriage came to a stop and the door opened to see the palace. It was huge! You were used to seeing 3-story buildings with the main house and a 2-story with the pavilion. But this thing had looked to be 10 stories tall, the rooms making it look much bigger than it did. The elder buildings coming to the main one made you sick. Come on, said the girl as she started to walk. You followed. She had been fast, a little too fast as you tried to keep up. That was when she slowed down and she was met with a large door. Maybe hers and the empress. Now when you go in, you are to address her as Her Majesty, and if she tells you to call her something else, then you do it. She then opened the door. The room was filled with many jewels and gems, with many flowers hanging from the ceiling. Her bed was in the middle where many rushed to her side, trying to make what she needed. Then was when you noticed you. You must be Lady Yin. Please help Our Lady. One grabbed your hands. Everyone else looked over, then ran to your side. Please. She has said your name so many times that we didn't know what she wants, another said. As they continued to speak, you were feeling sick with how much you were getting. Ladies! Give the girl a rest. She must be confused with all you speaking. Everyone moved away from you as a girl walked up to you. Now, I'm sorry, Lady Yin. Please, let me explain. She spoke. She, for some time, Our Lady, has been sick, coughing up blood, and whatever she has been eating, she has gone paler and paler, her body becoming skinny. It was like this for a year now, but then one day she started to whisper your name, saying some nonsense. She sighed, placing her hand over her head. May I take a look? You asked as the girl nodded. You walked up to the bed of Her Majesty. Her cheekbones noticeable. Her lips that may have been a pinkish were white. Her eyelids looked sunken. You turned to the ladies. Could you get me some rice water? And there should be only a couple of rice, and water should be cold. And I'm gonna need cold water and a towel. They nodded and went to get the items. See, the problem was that the lady was saying the things that were common. It was amnesia. Oh, yeah, amnesia? Or amaya? It's the lack of blood cells. But she looked like she had only maybe a couple, since her body looked white. Once one of the ladies came back with a towel, you turned to her again. After some time, we'll take her to an osan. The lady looked confused. That was when the rice water came. You placed a chair and sat right next to her bed, taking the bowl from the lady and sitting on the chair, grabbing a pillow to hold up her for a bit. You then sat down and grabbed the spoon, moving it towards her mouth. The spoon touched her lips and it slowly went into her mouth. Good. She still has the will to eat, you whispered. What? One asked. Don't mind me. You spoke, continuing to feed her. Then you placed the bowl down. I need the water and towels. You spoke, and they rushed to your side. Some of the girls had been holding each other as they watched. What are you going to do? One lady who explained yelled. What else? Warm water will help her recover fast, you spoke. You weren't going to let these ladies push you around. If they wanted their majesty to be fine, then they would let you do your thing. As you moved her kimono down to grab the towel and soak it in the water, then rubbing it on her neck. Then her chest. It felt a little weird, but you had to help. You then dipped it once again and did her back. You then placed it back in the bowl and putting her kimono up. You then got off your chair. This needs to happen every few hours. If not, then it would get worse. You pointed at the queen, and she is still fighting and staying alive. As long as she takes food, then that's the answer. The main girl sighed. Then I should show you to your room. She spoke. You followed her as she moved from the palace. That's when you came to your room. This will be your room. Your breakfast will be delivered tomorrow. She spoke, and you walked in. The room was small, but you didn't mind it at all. It felt like your old room. A bed, dresser, window, and desk, with one mirror. Your clothes had been laid on the bed. You put your hair down and placed your hair pins on the desk and everything that held up your hair. You then took off your kimono and put the nightgown on. You placed your kimono in the dresser. That's when you saw the feather again. You left it there since you didn't know how to use it. You then walked to your bed and flopped down and held your pillow. It was finally good to have a bed to yourself. It was weird, though, kind of. After being so long sharing a bed, now having your own. But after a week, it was like this, till she was able to sit up in her own bed. Her body was still weak and couldn't do much. She only looked at you, as you did your normal. Hello, Your Majesty. I'm Yin. You smiled. Yes. She spoke meekly. Her eyes held sparkles as she looked at you. She had been smiling. Your Majesty, is it all right if I take you to an osan? You asked her, to which she only nodded. You helped her up as the two of you walked to the osan that was a little away. She sat down and seemed to moan at the heat. She must have been cold. You washed her hair, and holy crap, it was long! What surprised you so much was that her hair was smooth, even if it was a little curly. Please, call me Lishu. You stopped. So, your last name is Lishu? You asked, to which she nodded. All right, Lady Lishu, I'm going to come in a bit. You got up and took off your kimono, then walking into the water, Lishu looked up and was humming a song. You had been cleaning under her nails. My lady, Lishu, are you humming Sakura Sakura? You asked. She then looked at you. How do you know that song?" she asked. "Yes. My mother would sing it to me when I went to bed as a little girl." She giggled. "I played it on the piano." She giggled. "What?" you asked. You were confused. If you recalled, ancient Japan never had a piano. "Are you human?" you asked. She looked at you confused, tilting her head. Human. I haven't heard that in years." She looked up again. "You're human, aren't you?" she asked and looked down at you. I was once, till I was brought back here by someone." She looked shocked. "You've been here once before?" she asked. "Yes, I accidentally came here and worked for the Chizakis, then escaped but was brought back." You spoke. You don't know why, but you were comfortable with her. You felt like she was a friend, a sister, a mother figure. You don't know, but you felt nice and warm around her. "Okay, Lishu, we're done here." You helped her get up and walk to the bench and help her place another kimono on. "Let me walk." She smiled. She then got up and walked, waddling to the door, then waiting for you. You followed. The two of you then returned to her room and changed her. There was a knock, and when you finished getting into her kimono, the door opened, and in walked a young male. "I'm glad to see you in well health, Mother." You both looked at the man. She was smiling. "Hello, Kiko." She smiled. "Father wanted me to give you this since he's busy, but he promises to see you tonight." The male Kiko spoke, giving her forget-me-nots? Wait, but forget-me-nots are native to Europe and Asia, but not as far as Japan. "Thank you." She smiled and Kiko bowed, then leaving the room. "Do you know what they mean?" she asked, looking at the plant. "No, I don't." You spoke, taking them and placing them by her bed. "True love and devotion." She smiled at them. "Tomorrow is your last day here." She spoke, her smile going into a frown. "Don't worry, Lady Lishu. We can always write to each other, or we can have some tea sometime." You smiled at her. "Also, if I may ask, was that your son?" You asked, and she looked back to you and nodded. "I have one daughter and one son." She spoke. "Kiko is 12 and Otto is 10. She smiled at her hands. You looked down and she noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked, tilting her head. I was pregnant once, but I lost it." That was when her hand placed on your shoulder. "I had many times where I could never see my children because of many things." She looked up. "See, I love children, but..." She then placed her hands on her stomach. "Have lost fertility. Many times Empress would have more than 6 children, but I guess she has failed." "Lishu, does the Empress here have..." You paused. "Concubines?" you asked. She then looked up at you, confused. "No, I'm the only." She spoke. You sighed, placing a hand on her chest. "I'm so glad," you smiled. And she giggled, confused, really. But once the next day, you packed your things and was walking to the carriage to go back, but... "Lady Yin," you heard Lishu. She was walking to you with a hand behind. "Thank you. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate you." Her hand went into her sleeve and walked up to you more. Take this. She smiled and placed out a golden chrysanthemum hairpin. Pure gold. The petals being gems of all kinds. As my thanks. Then all of you heard footsteps from behind. And mine. The emperor could be seen. He stood by Lishu. She won't be alive if it weren't for you. I owe you one. You bowed. Please, do not thank me. It is my pleasure. You smiled as you walked to the carriage. You looked back at the castle. Both the empress and emperor had covered the curtain, showing you respect to keep the castle a secret. But once back home, you were brought to the main house. Yona and Haru hurried to your side, tears coming down their faces as they hugged you. Please don't leave us again, Haru cried. Don't ever scare us like that again, Yona spoke. You patted them on the heads, and they continued to cry. That was when you saw Eri running out of the door, coming towards you. Yona and Haru moving out of the way so you could kneel down and hug her. She had been crying. You felt so bad. She wasn't even able to say goodbye, so you felt that the next day when she went to find you, you were nowhere to be seen. It must have been scary for her. You were for certain your kimono would be soaked from this. Eri, please don't cry. I'm here now. You kissed her forehead. She looked up, tears still in her eyes. I was so scared. You were gone, she cried. Oh, my Eri, I'm here now. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I had to leave quickly. You wiped away her tears. She hugged you once again, picking her up and holding her like a child you loved, which you did love her truly. You walked to the door, and Yona opened the door for you, since your hands were full, and walked into the building. Where is Kai? You asked Haru. I'm sorry, he decided that the guests weren't allowed at the house for the time being, so he's at one's of theirs. Haru spoke. You looked ahead. Good. If I find them in my house, then I'll have them killed. Yona and Haru noticed that you were genuine. You looked back at the two, smiling. Besides, the Emperor owes me one. The two looked at you. The once human with no power now has the most power. But I'm not that rude. You huffed, walking into the office. You sat at a desk you thought of was yours. Eri was in your lap as she looked around to see the room. Seeing the heaps of paper for you, you took one and read it. It was the cost of kimonos and jewelry for the nobles. Haru and Yona had begun to clean around the room. Is that a big number? Eri asked, looking at the paper. Yes, it is. 300,000 yen, or approximately $1,924, is a big number, you spoke. For certain things, yes, it's a big number, but for some things, it's tiny. She looked at the paper. Excuse me, Lady Yen has the paper from Her Majesty, spoke someone. Come in. You spoke as a man walked in, placing the letter in your hands, then leaving. The two looked at you with starry eyes. Open it, please, Haru spoke. What was that about? Yona asked. You giggled, opening the letter and reading it. Eri had peeked her head trying to read the letter, only wonder staring at it. We've been invited to a party. The girl's eyes sparkled. But it won't be until the spring. You spoke, placing the letter down. The two squealed as they giggled. You went back to looking at the papers, but one caught your eyes. You took it in your hands and read it. It was about the guests, and about what happened to them. It could make you puke. You placed the paper down and where Eri couldn't see it. You had continued late into the night. Yes, you did eat dinner and supper. You had also put Eri to bed and walked to your room, placing the golden hairpin in your vanity, then dressing into your nightgown and going into bed. You looked at the window, thinking about the Empress. How are forget-me-nots in this world? The closest place where they naturally occur is Cyrabia, which is in... Yeah, am I saying that right? Sarabia? I think it's Sarabia, which is in Russia, in the Ural Mountains. How could they be here? You bellied up a bit more, looking at your hands. Could this world be connected with each other's? Are there different cultures together? You were now scared. What is this world and what does it hold? You'll have to ask Kai. He had the knowledge. Does he even know about suburbia? You asked yourself. You laid back down and looked up, slapping your hands on your face. But then you slowly moved your hands down to your chest, thinking about the Empress's children. Did you really want kids? You sighed, slapping your hands on your face again. You kept thinking if you were ready, you would have to sleep on it. The next day, Kai was coming home, and you made your decision. You were eating breakfast with Eri, not realizing she was waiting for you to respond to her question. Mama? She asked, to which took you out of your thoughts. Yes? You looked confused. Do I get to go to that party? She asked with teary eyes. You smiled. I'm sorry, Eri, but you cannot. She then looked down, huffing. I'm sorry, Eri, you giggled. That was till Yona came in. The master should be here in any minute. You were ready to see him once more. You got up and kissed Eri on the head. Walking to the main door, you were planning on being a good little wife and greeting him. You didn't know why, because you were just in a good mood. You opened the door and saw him. He looked at you weirdly, probably because you had been smiling. What's with the weird look? He spoke, narrowing his eyes. Just in a good mood. You smiled. Why? Is there a reason? He asked as both of you walked inside. Well, Her Majesty has invited us to a spring party. The first week of spring. You spoke. I guess that would be something to be happy about. He stopped. You following after you were ahead of him. He walked up to you and placed a hand on your cheek. I'm just glad you're back safely. He kissed your forehead. Once he pulled away, he saw that your face had fallen. What's wrong? He asked. Is it wrong that I miss my baby? You asked, to which he only sighed. You carried him for 6 months. I wouldn't blame you for still missing him. You quickly looked up at him. Then, can we try again? Okay, I got a really important question for you guys. Do you like how this story is going or not? Because I just don't know. Half my mind likes the story and half of me doesn't. And I just want to know your guys' feedback. I'll take anything. I just need feedback if it's to your guys' liking or not, because I might have to change some chapters. And thank you all for listening so much. I love you all so much. Bye. Mwah.